Hello and welcome to the channel. So in this video, I'm going to talk about how you can make a collage using Photoshop. This time of year, as we get to the holidays, a lot of events, whether it be office parties, getting together with friends, or family get-togethers. A lot of times we'll capture a bunch of photos and we want to put it together just in one larger image that can be shared and printed out. And I'm going to go through a process that I follow to create one of these collages. Here I have 3 photos. I'm going to use these for my collage, something that's referred to as a triptych, which just means it's 3 photos. But the same process is going to apply with 3, 5, 10, 20. It's really a matter of figuring out how you want to arrange things on the canvas that you're creating. Now, a couple of things when you look at these photos that's important when you're selecting is to either make sure that they're very consistent in terms of things like colors, exposure, white balance, or make sure that they're all different. When it tends to look awkward is, in this case, if I had 2 that were cool and 1 that was warm, that would probably look a little unsettling to the person watching, especially if the one that has the warmer tones is towards one of the edges. So just something to keep in mind, but there really is no right or wrong way to go about selecting the photos. But for me, I like to have some consistency between them, and the subject matter should be somehow related. One other thing to consider is when you go to export these photos into Photoshop is to make sure that the size is going to work with what it is that you're doing. Since I'm going to arrange these in a horizontal orientation, I want to make sure that the short edge or the vertical edge is consistent across. Now, with the way they are in Lightroom, you can see that I've got 2 that are 2x3 and 1 that's 4x5. So I could leave it like that because there is balance, since that's the center one, and that's the one that I will use for the center. But I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to have them each be 4,000 pixels along that short edge. As I look at each one of these and I look at what the dimensions are, I can see that they are very different. And one thing I could do is I could simply crop them to have that same vertical size. But the easier way is to just do that on the export. And so with all 3 selected, I'm going to go and say export. And if I can catch it. And as I scroll down, I'm going to see resize to fit short edge, and I'm going to make that 4,000. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure it says to open in Adobe Photoshop 2025. That's just going to save me a step. This way that they will be available to me. I'm going to make sure that I've got a good resolution, so 320 pixels per inch. And also want to make sure that I've got 16 bits for my bit depth. In terms of file naming, one of the things that I like to do is to set the title for the image in Lightroom. And what that's going to do is that's going to allow me to set up a rule within the export to use that. And so you can see right here the example, and it's showing what that's going to look like, and that would be this one over here. So let's go ahead and export that. And it's going to say these already exist because I did do a quick dry run, but I'm just going to say to simply just overwrite those. And now it's going to go through its process and create these 3 files that will open up in Photoshop. So now that we're in Photoshop, and I'm just going to close this, I can see that I've got the 3 images available. And if I were to look at the image size, I can see that they are indeed 4,000 for the height. The first thing I need to do is I need to create a new file that'll just be a blank image. And the question that comes up is, so what size do you create? Since I'm doing a triptych that has 3 images side by side, I will probably go with a 1:3 aspect ratio. And the reason for that is that's one of the standard printing sizes. So definitely something to think about. Not that you can't have other sizes printed, but that tends to be a little bit more expensive, and it also makes it harder for people to frame if you're going to be giving this to somebody. As we look at these images, as I mentioned, I've got 2 that are 2:3 aspect and one that's a 4:5 aspect. And we know that the vertical axis is 4,000 pixels. So what that means is for this 4:5, it's 4,000 by 5,000 pixels. And for these 2:3s, it is 4,000 by 6,000. Horizontally, what that means is I'm going to need 17,000 pixels at a minimum going across. Now that doesn't leave any room for spacing or borders or anything like that. Plus, we would like to have a number that's divisible by 3 for that 1:3 aspect ratio. So you might be thinking, well, 18,000, that's divisible by 3. But the problem is that's just not going to leave enough room. So the next number to go up to would be 21,000. So that's going to give me a 7,000 by 21,000 size image that I'm going to create. So let's go ahead and do that. So if we go to File and New, I can go ahead and just put in what I want. And as I look down, do I see a 1:3? Well, I don't really see that there, but I do see a custom 21,000 by 7,000. I can go and give it a name. So I'll call it Fishing Vessel. And let's go ahead and create that. So I have this white background. We'll fix that a little bit later. That's not going to be the most exciting thing. We'll probably want to do something a little bit different, but we don't have to do that right now. The first thing we want to do is we want to start to arrange our images within the photo. So I'm going to grab the center one, and I'm just going to do a select all and a copy. And I'm not quite sure why. I know at one point I was able to just go and drag it on. That doesn't seem to be working for me anymore. So if somebody knows the secret to getting that to work, please drop that in the comments. I would greatly appreciate that, because that has been frustrating me for about the past week as I was creating this and a few others. So I'm just going to go now and just say paste. So edit and paste. I could have also just done Command V or Control V. So now I can see it sitting in here, and I'm just going to go and just drag it around. And I can try to place it in the center, but the easiest way to do that is we do have these alignment guides. And if I click on this ellipse and I say canvas and then just click on center, it's going to move it to the center. So now I have this nicely centered. Let me go bring in the other 2, and then I can figure out my spacing from there. So I'm going to just follow the same process. Go to here, select all, edit, copy, back to my fishing vessel, edit and paste, and I'm just going to bring it over roughly here. I'm not going to worry too much about getting the tops aligned. I'm just really kind of looking at that corner. So I just want to see if I've got somewhat consistent space between the top and the side. It doesn't have to be perfect. So I think I'm going to go with something like that. And now let's go grab the last one, which would be this one here. and follow the same thing. And you could definitely use the shortcuts too. Just doing it this way just so that you can see the exact steps instead of doing some shortcuts that you couldn't really see on the video. Let's go ahead and hit copy, then back to fishing vessel, and go back in, and let's just paste that back in. And I'm going to, again, just look at this side, and again, just try to be somewhat consistent just from the top and the side. So I think maybe somewhere in there is good. So I want to just go ahead and select the 3 layers. So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to leave layer 2 selected, and then using Command or Control on a Windows machine, select the other 3 layers. Now what I can do is I can come back up to here, and now instead of having canvas, I'm going to go with selection. And I'm going to align them according to the top. So now they're aligned according to the top. And now I can also look at how do I want to distribute the spacing, vertically or horizontally. I'm going to do that horizontally. And you can see there's just a slight nudge there. So now that I have them all selected, I'm going to come up and go to Layer. And I'm going to say Group Layers. Now that I've got this group, I'm going to now go back and go back to Canvas, and I'm going to go back and select this horizontal. And I can see that actually I was pretty good with how I had that selected. So that was already sitting in the center. If I want to, I can also move this around, but I think I'm going to leave this as it is. The next thing is, now what do we want to do about this background? As I mentioned before, having that white background really isn't the greatest. So let's go ahead and just select the background, and I'm going to come in and select the gradient tool. Let's start just a little bit outside, and I'm going to drag this across, and again just go to there. Now I have a bunch of different presets. I've got different styles that I can select for how I want to do this, and notice it gives me some other additional guides for that I can go and adjust and move it around for what I want that effect to be. And I think I'm going to probably stick with something probably like that. So I like the little bit brighter in the middle and then darker towards the edges for a couple of reasons. One is the one in the middle is just slightly brighter due to the sky. They're actually, if you look at the histograms, they are actually pretty close to each other. But I think I'm going to like that just a little bit better. And I think that color does kind of match, but we have a lot of choices. So if we look under basics, that's really more of a, black to either nothing or a black to white. I selected one of the blues, but there's purples, pinks, reds, cloud, grays, and you can see there's all kinds of different options within these. So a lot of different things that you could do, and if you just want to have neutral colors, you can also look at those as well and pick those. So I'm going to stick with what I have here. You can also adjust how that's changing in terms of the colors, but I'm pretty happy with that right now. The last thing I want to do is I want to add just some words down here. So the reason that I left it big like that was to give me some room for doing that. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go and grab the text, and I'm going to put that right here towards the center. Again, doesn't really matter if I get it exact. And I think I want to make that just a little bit bigger. So let's go to 150, and so now we have that. So the name of the ship, because it's in Icelandic, it uses some characters that I don't have on my keyboard, so I did copy and paste it into Notepad or into Notes. So I'm going to just go and just copy that. come back in here and paste that. And now I can figure out, is this the color that I want for this or not? And I think what I want to do is I think I want to grab a color off of the ship itself. So just go ahead and select this, and we'll come in and let's just look at some different options that we have. Dark, what if I go with the letters? And you can see I can pick from any of these different ones. So I think we'll stick with that one right there. Go ahead and say OK. And now I'm going to just change this to a selection, and I'm going to go and do the same thing I did before, but I do want to make sure that it is against the canvas, which it is. Go ahead and say center it, and so it adjusts it to the middle. And maybe I did want to bring that down just a little bit. You could also see that it will give you a little bit of a guide, but it is pretty hard to get that. So it's going to bring it down just a touch. So I think I want to just move those photos down a little bit. And one of the things to be a little careful of is what this setting is right here. So right now it says layer. So when I go and select the group, I need to go and change that to group. Now I can move the group up and down, and I think I want to have it probably something right around there. And since I have that center bar showing up, I know that that's centered. That looks a little bit more balanced to me from what I have, and now I've got my text in the right place. The final step is to save this. I'm going to actually save it twice. The first, I'm going to save it as a PSD or Photoshop file, and I'm going to save it on my computer as opposed to out to the cloud. The reason for saving it as a PSD is that this will allow me to keep all of this layer information if I want to go back and change something later. So I do like doing that. Yes, it is a rather large file, but it does give me that flexibility if I need to go back. So I'll go ahead and hit save. And once it finishes saving, because it is a large file, is going to take it a little bit. I'm then going to go and select save as a copy and save it as a JPEG. That'll then give me something that I could send to a printer, or if I want to post it online, or basically whatever else I want to do with it. Having it as that JPEG will definitely make things easier for me. I won't have to convert it later. I can come back in, go save a copy. Something that I do find kind of odd that Adobe did, why they don't just have it all just under one since you're saving it in a different format. But for some reason, if you want to save it as a JPEG, you do have to save as a copy. Let's go ahead and delete that copy word that it sticks in there and go ahead and hit save. So now I have my final image. I've got my triptych, and you can see how you could arrange all kinds of other things. These different guides really do help to get things aligned properly and makes the job pretty easily. And you could also see, even though we have a number of layers here, it was really straightforward on how you work with those layers. As always, thanks for watching. And if you enjoyed this video and found it informative, please go ahead and hit that like. If you want to be notified about future videos, go ahead and hit subscribe and that little bell, and you'll be notified whenever I put a new video up. Thanks. Bye.